Welcome to Romera Records Virtual Cast. Today we have on Justin Lamb. How's it going, Justin?
What's going on, Jackson? I'm glad I'm here. Glad to talk to you. I'm excited, and I'm pumped for the audio quality because I just heard my air conditioning turn off. So, so yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, so this podcast almost didn't happen because my hard drive started messing up right before we got on. So
Yeah,
hopefully everything runs smoothly. But so yeah, me and Justin got acquainted through Podmatch. It's a website that helps people do podcast and get people on. So it's good to have you. Good to have somebody to communicate with that we know nothing about each other.
yeah. I do interviews, as I think you probably know already myself, and it's always interesting to talk to people that where you don't have that background connection, like, oh, we worked together 15 years ago or something like that. It's just blank slate. So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah, those are usually my favorite, honestly, just because, like, well, I do love catching up with old friends because
Yeah,
it's like, it's very seamless. Like, you just talk about stuff that's happened to you and stuff that you don't know about each other yet, and you catch up with that. And then, but it's also great to just talk to people that you just don't know because there's literally endless amounts of stuff that you can discover about each other.
oh
So
yeah.
pretty cool.
That's been the nice thing about it's weird to say the sentence. It's been the nice thing about COVID, but it's I didn't ever want to do virtual ones. I know you started doing in-person interviews, and I did that. I was doing the same thing, and I do it out of my home. And so it adds this whole other personal touch, right? Because you have people into your space, and if it's someone that I used to be close with, we're not close anymore, but like I'm comfortable with them, then I'll show them my house because we've only been in this house a couple years, and then when everything happened and got shut down, I had to be like, "Oh no, I got to do it like Zoom now."
Mm,
And I have the technology and everything, but it was like a values thing. I didn't want to do that because I didn't have that personal connection. And it's been nice because I can't do it in person with everybody because some people live in all sorts of different places in the country and the world. And then B, I have, like you mentioned, I get to meet people I've never met before. And um, that's there's something to be said about reaching outside of your bubble, right? So
yeah, and I tell people all the time, like it's the best thing you can do every day is to decide to make yourself uncomfortable
oh
because
yeah.
when you do that, like that's when you experience life.
Yeah.
Like I mean, dark side of this, some people are like, "Oh, I love to feel pain. It makes me feel alive." But I mean, it's true. Like if when your body feels
Discomfort.
discomfort,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's when you truly realize, hey, I'm alive. I can do what I want to do. I can change my life. I've got decisions to make. So
Yeah. It's funny. I talk a lot to people about like I'm from a small town, like, mostly white people, and it's just people didn't leave their home. They went to school and then they moved back, and they've been here now ever since, and they raised family here and everything. And while I'm not like any sort of vagabond that went off and did a bunch of stuff, I uh I did live out in LA for a couple of years. I lived down in Nashville for like a jokeable stint. I shouldn't even mention it, but it's just those times away though, you get to see other people and other cultures, and it just like how other people live and talk. And like I didn't know I had an accent until I left where I live, and I didn't think that was a thing. I was like, what are you talking about? um and it's so important people do that, and I can't stress that enough. And I just don't think enough people get out of their comfort zone in their lives. And it's I think it could probably solve some problems that we're facing if they did that. So yeah, I like talking to the new people that I've never met before, and this is definitely no exception. So I'm glad to be here.
absolutely. So where are you located?
I'm in Michigan, just probably like 45 minutes north Detroit. Um,
Okay.
and it's funny. It's another Michigan thing. We measure things in time instead of miles. Does that make sense?
Okay.
But yeah, so a little less than an hour outside of Detroit, and I grew up here, but like I said, I left to pursue the music dream when I was 21 and moved out to LA for a little while, uh, and kind of came back here. I've been within an hour of where I'm at now, pretty
Okay.
much since I've been 25,
I'm
24.
I'm actually in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, nice.
And it's funny you just said that. I've never heard that phrase, measuring things in time instead of. But I think that would be a trait of low traffic, because if you're in LA, you definitely
Yeah.
wouldn't measure things in time because the time
Well,
completely varies.
yeah, I took it with me when I went there,
Hmm.
and that's the time does vary, and it's very frustrating. I drove around in LA when I lived there, like, for work. I worked on some TV shows and had to, like, drive around a lot, and timing that was next to impossible.
Mm.
Even when you, like, figure out shortcuts and get around, like, the major freeways and stuff, it's still ridiculous.
Did people
Uh,
expect you to be on time for stuff, or was it just kind of like, we understand?
um, I think there's probably a bubble. I think the lifestyle of Los Angeles lends itself to having, like, a little padding for any
Yeah,
sort of timing. I've always been a crazy stickler for timing. Like,
yeah,
I like to be on time. I've always been the, early is on time and on time is late kind of
yeah, yeah,
person, which I've had some, like, lazy coworkers that find that annoying because like, come on, man, screw
yeah,
this up.
yeah.
But yeah, but I did that in LA when I was there. I wouldn't say distance. I'd always be like, "Oh, that's airport. That's like hour and a half away." And then look at that, you're giving it right, hour and a half. So add another 30 minutes there. Maybe we'll be there at 5. Maybe we'll be there at 5:30.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as we were talking about, it's interesting talking to people from different areas, is just because, like, people just perceive things differently, and how they feel, timing, or like if you meet somebody, have you ever been acquainted with people from like New York, like New
Oh
York
yeah,
City?
oh yeah,
Everything is go go go. Like, their timing is just completely different from, I'm from the South. I'm from Alabama,
yeah.
and I've lived in the South the majority of my life. I was in the Air Force and lived in North Dakota for about 4 years. So, but it's still like country living up there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, big city and the southern states completely different,
Oh
because
yeah,
down south, everything's slow. Like, we're not in a rush to get anywhere. Like,
yeah,
if you're driving, you tell people, yeah, you can get in front of me, all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But up north, no. They
I
don't play nice.
That short stint that I lived in Nashville, I was like, "Oh, why is everyone going so slow?" Like, the speed limit says 65. Why aren't you going 70? What is wrong with you, man? Yeah, that would drive me nuts. And then on top of that, I was there. They got like a dusting of snow while I was there, and shit shuts down.
Oh, yeah. Cars are in ditches. Like,
Yeah,
nobody
I
knows
was
what
like,
to
"What
do.
is going on here?" Yeah, and it's hard to take yourself out of what you're used to, and it's just like, why is everyone? And I still, to this day, if I'm driving and I see like a Missouri plate or an Alabama plate, and then they're going like 5-10 under, I'm like, oh, what is going on here? Like,
Go back to your
yeah,
state.
I left my house at this time to get to this place at this time. You are messing up my program here. Yeah, it's funny. It really is very different. Explain that to me. You're in Memphis. You're from Alabama. Why you guys take it so slow all the time?
I don't know. I think it's just like, I
Everyone's high.
I don't know if it's just a mentality. They say, so, like, if you live in more countryside,
Yeah,
you're not competing with anybody.
yeah,
You live just your house, and then 1 mile down the road there's another house, and so forth and so on. But if you live in the city, everybody's on top of each other. So everybody's like, it's like a competition. Like, can I get to where I need to go before you get to where you need to go? And
yeah,
there's no subways around here. You're not, competing to get onto something or anything like that. And, just like traffic, like, sometimes, so I live in the city of Cordova, but, like, it's annexed to Memphis. So I'm in Memphis, basically. I pay taxes to them. But some days the traffic is slammed, and it takes me, so if there's no traffic, it takes me 30 minutes to get to downtown Memphis.
okay.
Sometimes it's taken me close to 2 hours to get home because of traffic.
Jeez.
But that's rare. That I think that happened like once or twice.
Yeah.
But other than that, it takes me about 30 minutes to get home.
Yeah.
And so, the traffic, it varies, but yeah, I guess it's just a lifestyle because you're not, as I said, no competition. You're just kind of doing your own thing and
Yeah.
everybody's living their life.
There's something to be said about that though. It feels like almost like a litmus test, like how you drive. Because you're the way you're talking about that. My wife is from a little north of here, and they're houses that are spaced out like just about a mile in a lot of areas, and there's a lot of farms up there, and sometimes it's just cool to go down the back roads. No one's there, so you can go like 55, 60, and windows down, and
Hmm.
um, but it's definitely not a competition thing. But then I think about little moments of uh, like if you speed up to pass somebody because you're going faster than them, and then they speed up so you can't pass them. Like I run into that situation more often than I feel like is should happen. And that's that competition, right? Like, no, hold on. I want to be in front. Like I'll go my own speed, but I'm going to be in front. Uh, it does feel like a litmus test where it's like, okay, is this an inconsiderate piece of crap or is this just like a normal person? And all I'm doing is having like flashes of parking lots and people that drive me crazy. I think I probably get the angriest of, and any time in my life is when I'm in my vehicle. And it's I will arrogantly say I often feel like it's not my fault.
Well, nine times out of 10, you truly feel like, somebody's testing your patience. But if somebody drives and doesn't put on their blinker or stops in front of you when,
Yeah.
they shouldn't, or the light's been green for 1 millisecond, they haven't gone yet. Like, those are the types of things where it's either in you to be upset about it or it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a very patient person and a patient driver, so I usually don't get upset about that stuff. I do
Yeah.
get mad when people drive, they drive crazy, but it's like, and that craziness could be endangering somebody
Oh
else.
yeah.
But other than that, like, if somebody's swerving in and out of traffic, if as long as they're not like about to hit somebody, I'm okay. But like I'm not a crazy like road rage type person.
Oh yeah. No. Yeah. No, I live under the assumption everyone has a gun but me, so I don't participate in anything like that.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, I see. It's so funny we're just talking about driving, but I see. I could talk about this for far too long. Apparently, I see people with their phones too much, and I don't want to sound like the old man because, like, I use my phone for podcasts and music and everything in the car, but it's like Bluetooth in the car. If I get like a text or a phone call, like it reads it to me because that's what technology does now. So like when I see people like playing freaking Angry Birds on their steering wheel, I'm like, what is going on? And I see it way too often, and it's people always think it's young people, and I swear to God, it's like my parents' age. It's like
It is.
55 to 70, and they're like, gotta keep up with their games, or they're trying to send a text, which they're bad at anyway. And it's just like, what is happening? You're driving a car.
And my theory is that the reason why older people do it more than younger people is because younger people are so used to doing it. Like they probably are on their phone and texting all day long.
Yeah,
So to be in the car and need to do it, it's no biggie to them. And plus, like they grew up with the technology.
yeah.
But older people, it's like it's new, it's cool. It's like, oh, this thing, like, look, I can text somebody and drive at the same time. Look at
But
me.
you shouldn't. Yeah, I cannot tell you how many text messages I get from my mother while she is driving. I'm like, what are you doing? I'd be like, look at this deer. I'm like, that's clearly out of the front windshield of your car. What are you doing?
Oh my god.
Explain to me why that couldn't wait till you got home to send me this picture. Did you capture the deer? Is that why you stopped? Like, what are you talking about?
I
Oh
jumped
man.
out of the car and captured the deer, put it in the vehicle, just wanted to make sure you knew in case something happened.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole idea of, I guess just the way people are, and I've heard stuff like people's heartbeat is like faster in if you live in like a big city or your the way you walk, like people
Yeah,
walk faster if they live in a big city, and it's just like that pace, like your life is
yeah.
just everything's just more go instead of like, let's just sit here, chill.
It makes
We
sense.
have time. So
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you evolve to your environment, right? I think that's.
absolutely.
I was not a big fan of walking. I moved to LA with nothing but like a suitcase of clothing, so I didn't have a car for the first like year I was there. I walked everywhere, and then walking became no big deal.
Mm,
You just kind of, I think you evolve to your surroundings when you're living in somewhere like New York. I imagine you. That's like the people that sleep that anywhere in New York, right? My sister-in-law lived in Brooklyn for like 12 years, and we go visit her, and she'd just be like passed out, 1 in the morning. Meanwhile, outside there's like a knife fight, there's an ambulance, there's a all like people coming home from the bar, and me and my wife be laying there and be like, "What? How's anyone sleeping right now?" And everyone else in the house is just snoring away. They don't care. I think you just become used to it. It's weird.
you just saying all that made me think about how funny it'd be for like a news reporter in the South to like, like a suburb or like a very countryside area to have to go
Yeah,
to like New York City or Brooklyn
yeah,
to do the news. Like it's just constant news everywhere compared to their boring lifestyle back home.
yeah. Daryl, we're sending you up to Brooklyn to report on this new restaurant opening. What?
Just
Yeah.
constant stuff going on.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like from a psychological standpoint, it triggers kind of the fight or flight anxiety, right? Like the consistency of noise and lights and people and sounds, and everything's constantly happening. So your brain's just trigger, and you have to find some like way to make peace with it. And sometimes that's just getting used to it and blocking it out, becoming desensitized to it. I
Yeah,
mean that could be a statement on the country right now. It's
yeah,
becoming desensitized to it. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing to think about.
yeah.
That's for sure.
And I think that's why people from the South get the stigma of like just being like slow, dumb people, is because you have the ability to not experience much. Like a lot of
Yeah,
people in the South are farmers and, they just deal with animals all day or crops all day and they don't have
yeah,
to deal with humans. And so like, that's where you're capped at, how much you have to deal with. And but if you're, in Brooklyn and as you say, if you got knife bites and you got this fight or flight, your brain is just constantly
yeah,
firing, then, you're I guess your stimulus of like how your brain works is going to constantly be working, and so you just develop knowledge and wisdom and street smarts and that kind of stuff. So that's your brain just evolves when you're having these interactions all the time.
yeah, yeah. It's an interesting concept, and then and that's not to say anything about like the individual's intelligence or anything, but definitely the day-to-day functioning
Yeah.
is slower pace. I think we just answered the original question. So perfect. Yeah, I like it. It's a good explanation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, after all that talking, let's talk about what you actually do.
Yeah, yeah. I do tangents. Apparently, that's what I do. I go off on tangents. Uh, yeah, I mean, I do a number of things. I'm a host of podcast Friend Request, which is funny. I'd listened to your latest episode. I think it was
Mm.
Olivia, yeah.
Yeah, Olivia Smith.
And right in the beginning, you're like, yeah, I saw her on Facebook, and I was like, what's she been up to? I haven't talked to her in a while, and I was like, bro, that is the freaking concept of my entire podcast. I was sitting on the couch one night, and I was looking at, Facebook feeds and comments and likes, and I was like, I feel like I don't know any of these people. Like I know them. Like, we worked together at some point, went to high school together, but I was like, I don't know, what does that mean?
Mm,
And I was like, it'd be really cool if someone could like interview these people, be like, what have you been up to the last 22 years?
mm.
And I thought, okay, I'll do that. And I scheduled some, and um, it turned into what it is today. Like my podcast ends up centering around like mental health too, different struggles people go through, trauma and that sort of thing. And I'm going into that field to become a therapist. So, um, and this podcast partially inspired me to do that, because sitting across from people and kind of feeling my natural instincts and certain questions, and leading to certain solutions. Like my favorite thing in the world is when I'm talking to somebody and you see that little light bulb go off in their eyes and they're like, never made that connection before. And I love it. I absolutely love it. So that's what the podcast is. And starting the third season on August 30th will be first episode of the third season. So super pumped about it. But yeah, that's what I do. And then as you can see from behind me, I do a bunch of other stuff. I play guitar. I collect random crap. I'm a big nerd. um yeah, I do a lot. I do a lot of things. My wife says I have too many hobbies, but
No such thing.
exactly.
I actually envy people who have hobbies, or not hobbies, but who collect things. And
Yeah.
some people might view it as like just a bunch of junk that they're just collecting over time. But I think it's kind of cool. I don't collect anything like
Yeah.
except like I guess equipment to do stuff. But
That's a
yeah,
good thing to equipment. It's just like an expensive thing to collect.
exactly. Yeah. But I don't collect comic books or those what are those little they have like bubble faces
Oh,
basically.
like the Funko Pops.
Yes, the fun.
Yeah,
I got a friend who does those.
yeah.
I don't collect any of that kind of stuff.
Well, that's yeah. Those are funny too because I don't collect those at all. I know a lot of people that do and like obsessively, and it gets into a dangerous territory. But I do. I've been sober for over 2 years, and I write articles on non-alcoholic beers for this uh, sober lifestyle magazine called The Sober Curator.
Mm.
And the creator got little Funko Pops made of all of us, like all the contributors to the magazine. So I have one getting shipped to me that's looks just like me. So
That's
that one
so
I
cool.
that one I will collect. That'll go on the shelf there behind me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, collecting's funny. So I'll get deep real quick here, but some of my stuff that I collect, I had a podcast before called Modern Beers and 90s Nostalgia where I would um, try out craft beer and then review it and then talk about some 90s pop culture thing like movies or music or whatever that looks like. Um, because it was, that was my generation. I was born in the 80s, so a lot of my childhood is spent in the 90s and stuff's just fun. So hence like all the freaking X-Men action figures behind me. But I buy the stuff for the podcast because I'd have people on and we'd try out the latest double IPA 16% alcohol or some shit. And then we'd play with magic cards or I'd bring out some action figures, and because having that thing and holding it so you have this tangible item like brings back so many memories, and then you can really talk about it. And then we or watch a movie and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I ended up accumulating all this stuff, and I was like, I love this stuff. Like I really I have so much nostalgia for the 90s, so I just kept getting more of it. And then I had like a little breakthrough during COVID where I realized uh like I said, I'll get deep quick, but when I was a kid, when childhood wasn't going super well, my escape or my self protection, but I go to my imagination, I play with all my action figures. And so even as an adult, I still had that connection to them. And
Mm.
it's funny, once I had that like kind of breakthrough and be like, oh, I'd like that's because that's where my safe space was, right? When like parents were yelling or people were being crappy at school, like I had my freaking X-Men. Um, and once I had that, I was like, I don't really feel like buying anymore. So I have all this stuff behind me, but I'm good.
Hmm.
I don't if someone finds like a 1989 Ghostbusters house, I'll take it. But
Were,
that's about
were
it.
you just into the action figures, or were you into like actually knowing like backstories, like the comics or like video games or movies?
Um, I did I did comics for a long time as a kid. Definitely like X-Men. X-Men was always my favorite stuff. Um, obviously like I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s, so GI Joe, and I think I sputtered out at Power Rangers, but
Mm.
it's and Star Wars. God help us, Star Wars. But yeah, no, I definitely I get into all the stuff. I mean, now I'm a big nerd with the Marvel stuff, and I could go on for days about all the mistakes they made in like X-Men movies. And uh, but yeah, I don't know how far into it you mean, because it's kind of like not to branch off, but in the same comparison, you like music, right? So you're a music guy. Are you a music guy where if you like a band, you know everything about that band? Okay. See,
So I am I'm sort of. So it kind of depends on the person. Like if it's a type of person who I can like somebody's music
yeah.
without really being into them as a person. And then there's some people like I'm like, "Oh, I think I would like them as a person and like
Yeah.
actually want to like hang out with them." So then I would start to learn more about their actual life. But that's
Okay.
not
Yeah,
every
that's
single, you know.
yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have a buddy that's he's an audio engineer, and so he like gets heavy into all the production stuff, and his, his favorite bands are like Radiohead and stuff like that. So he gets he knows everything about the bands that he likes. Like he
Mhm.
knows every name of every band member. He knows like, oh, that's when this guy joined and he replaced this guy. And I've never been that person. And I think when you play guitar and sing and you're in that like group of people and other musicians, people assume you do. And so like I'll get questions. Like one of my favorite bands is Counting Crows.
Mhm.
And I know the lead singer is Adam Duritz. I have all their albums. I know pretty much every song, but people will be like, "Oh yeah, and it's crazy about like Rob, the keyboardist back in 2018, right?" And I'll be like, I didn't even know there was a guy named Rob in the band. Like I'm just not. I don't know. I'm. It's not worth my time to find out more about the individuals in a band just because I like their music. Like,
Mhm.
does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And so when it comes to stuff that I'm into, like that theme is pretty universal. Like I can be into certain aspects of stuff and then just not know anything about the other stuff. I used to
Yeah.
like Star Wars, I think more, but now more and more people like Star Wars and like have read novels and they'll be like, yeah, but then JJ Abrams really screwed up, blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, I didn't know that was a thing. I just thought that was a cool movie. Like
Yeah.
there's so many levels of I don't know what it's called now, nerddom. I don't
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
but it just feels like I'm a permanent amateur in that arena. So I just do what I like. I
Is
stopped.
there something that you do take to into that depth?
Um, yeah, there's got to be stuff. There's weird stuff. I was obsessed with the movie Scream for a really long time. Well, Scream
Really?
and Nev Campbell. I had a huge crush on Nev Campbell growing up.
Okay.
Um, so I know a lot of miscellaneous useless facts about that. I guess when I was younger, I got into some. If I was really into something, I would find out everything I could about it. Never music though.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like my favorite TV show is Community. I could tell
Okay.
you just about everything about Community, um, in a crazy person kind of way. Just uh, so yeah, if there's something, it's funny you asked that, and I'm thinking like, why no music? Like, there's not really any band or artist that I know a weird amount of information about. That's that's interesting because I'm a big musician guy and I have a lot of favorite bands, but I think beyond the songs, I don't know if I want to learn anything else. Never meet your heroes, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
I mean, and I feel that way too. Like since, I rap, and since I rap, I think about it as like, okay, if I want to be a great rapper, I really shouldn't idolize other rappers
yeah.
because it's kind of weird if I view them as like my competitors. I can't really idolize them because then that's kind of weird. It's
Yeah.
like I don't know if you ever follow sports, but you'll see like a rookie quarterback coming to the NFL,
Yeah, yeah.
and he grew up idolizing Tom Brady. Well, Tom Brady's still in the NFL.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, so so they're still, they're able to play against the guy that they grew up idolizing. So
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. It's like, oh, yeah, I got a game against him tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, there are people who I definitely like, think about. Oh, that's a great musician. Like, so ASAP Rocky, he's one of
Yeah,
my
yeah.
favorite rappers, and he is one of my favorite rappers because a lot of things he talks about in his music are very thought provoking. So he's got a song called Holy Ghost, and he's talking about how different churches and see, I grew up very Christian, but I'm not anymore. And he talks about his like how he views God, and at one point he says, "I got my own relationship with God." So he's not just like a lot of other rappers just talking about drugs, sex, and money or something like that. He
Yeah, yeah.
talking about very conscious thinking, and he actually went and spoke. I think, gosh, what was the name of that school? It's some prestigious school in like Europe. Uh,
Okay.
they asked him to come speak there, and he just like educates the youth on just music and art in itself. And it was actually pretty cool because one of the girls that was listening to him speak, she asked him about degrading music toward women,
Yeah.
and he had to answer for it, because he's got some music like that, but he also has music that's not like that. And I thought it was a great question, because
Yeah.
he's kind of playing both worlds. But yeah, it was he's just the type of guy who I would want to learn more about because he seems like he's got his head on straight.
Yeah.
But there's other rappers that I think are good rappers, but I don't really care what they what they do in their personal life. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I get that, and the thing I think you point out that makes the most sense is, his values, like as a because of the stuff he talks about, and because he's not afraid of the confrontation of those questions and answering them in a genuine way. And I think he probably has the like personal traits like outside of everything rap that you would want to embody in some way, right? So
yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, and I think about like one of the podcasts I listened to when I started listening to podcasts was Armchair Expert, and
Mhm.
like Dax Shepard, I think is that way for me a lot, just because he's not afraid to be vulnerable and point out when he's like wrong, and also be a little arrogant when he's right. Like I'm like, yeah, like I can relate to that stuff, and some of the ways the gears turn in his head are how he got successful. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to look at people like that, um, just as a kind of as a role model. And when you put it in the way of like competition and looking up to people, like the Tom Brady metaphor, that is funny because I feel like that's happened so many times. You always see the guys interviewed after the game, and like the rare New England loss, they're like, yeah, it was hard playing against my hero, but because that's got to feel so weird. It's like I feel victorious, but also I feel kind of bad because I just beat
Yeah.
my.
Yeah. I mean, I let's see. I don't know. I can't think of anybody like a superhero or something that would have happened to. I mean, like usually they don't like cross universes or like they've had different like Robins. It's completely different storylines.
Yeah, yeah,
Think
yeah.
about Batman or something. But yeah, I mean, it would just be weird. You have a
Yeah,
kid that grows up and has to imagine if he has to fight Batman. He has to fight. He's got
yeah,
to fight Spider Man or Superman or something. It'd be kind of weird. But yeah, I think that I guess getting deep into people's lives can determine really just the kind of person you are. You seem like a psychological, person.
yeah.
So maybe you would only want to get into, certain people's lives that you found beneficial to you.
Yeah. And I mean, I would argue that what we know about anyone that's in celebrity culture, whether they be, like A list or F list, like they're what do we actually know about them,
Yeah,
Like and that's a tough thing to get a handle on. And that's where I think I probably got way more into stuff like Scream and these movies I was watching when I was a teenager, because there I don't know where the line was there, because it's all I worked at Blockbuster when I was a kid, man. I was all about movies. So like I wanted life to kind of play out like a movie. So what I thought I knew about all these people was like, that was the truth about them. And that you get older and you're like, oh, this is just like, you put on a certain face for certain people, and celebrities are literally professionals at doing that. And so
yeah,
I don't so when I think about anybody, whether it be like a rock star or a movie star anybody that's achieved some sort of fame where they got a million followers and a blue check mark, like what the hell do I know about them?
Yeah.
I can assume, and you can listen to lyrics and relate to stuff on a level that you're like, how is this even possible? But that doesn't necessarily mean you know anything about them. It doesn't mean they're not a douchebag.
There's this rapper named Dizzy Wright, and in one of his songs, he said something that just like blew my mind. But he's like trying to diss somebody, and
Yeah.
he says you're like Denzel in action. You're probably a good guy, but we only see you acting. And I was like, oh my god, I never thought about that. Like
Yeah.
we think about like Will Smith, like
Yeah.
he's always like a good guy or whatever in all his shows or movies, and it's like I don't even know Will Smith. I have no
Yeah.
idea who he is. I only see him acting,
Yeah.
and I never really like like contemplated that. Like just because we see these people act a certain way, and a lot of like a villain or something like that. Like if they play that one character, that's how you think of that person. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
you see that face, you think that's a bad person, but
Yeah.
it's not. They're just acting.
Oh yeah. Look at like De Niro and Pacino and stuff. No one's gonna like just assume they're teddy bears or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's no world where I approach Joe Pesci anywhere. I don't care if I'm 2 feet taller than him. Guy scares the shit out of me. Uh, yeah, that's it's so true though. You don't know anything about it, and it's weird because our culture has shifted in a way to where we want to know. And
Mm.
I say we as like the global we. I don't think I personally give a crap.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I kind of like the other than like the terrible like sexual assault and stuff that was happening. I like the old timey Hollywood, like actors acted.
yeah,
There weren't reality shows, like all that stuff. Like I find that I like that better. Plus, it adds this level of mystery. If you do like an actor or something, you're like, God, I wonder what they're really like in person. And there's no tabloids back then, or
that
like,
mystique.
yeah. And now it's just like, if you get a Grammy nomination, chances are like we already know everything about you and got pictures of you in your underwear. And you're like, there's nothing, there's no mystery left about that person. And
Yeah,
as far as like the Hollywood experience goes, I think I would prefer it the old way where we didn't know anything about anybody.
yeah.
So
It's kind of weird, just and people. It's unfortunate because people will, if they see, I haven't been around like a ton of super famous people, but like
yeah,
the fact that we see all this on social media and stuff, like when you bump into that person in public, it's like you feel like you know them, but you
yeah,
don't. And it's like you have to collect yourself and be like, oh, I don't know this person. And you have to think about like, say you are like a Will Smith and let's say me Jackson Henderson, let's say I follow him on Instagram and I follow his Facebook page and all this stuff, and I see him every day. I'm seeing all of his stuff, and then I fly out to LA one day and I see him, like he's eating at an Olive Garden with his family. I can't just walk up to this guy and act like I know him just
yeah,
because I see his stuff. Like he's gonna look at me and like, who are you?
yeah,
And some people might be like, Will, it's me.
yeah,
But you have to think like he has no idea who you are. And I
yeah,
and I think, we, as you were saying, like it's almost like people feel like they deserve to know what's
yeah,
going on in people's lives. And it's like, no, you don't. Like
yeah.
it's just their life.
I've been watching NBC for free for 30 years. You owe me something. Wait, what? Yeah, it's weird, man, when I hear stories of people like obviously the any interview podcast you listen to by a celebrity is just all celebrity guests, which whatever. But I when you hear people talk about those moments where like they're, having ice cream with their kid or something and all these people are like, "Oh, can I get a picture?" And you're like, I I cannot imagine myself in that situation. And obviously there's like other layers of that where I'm just like I'm not that person in normal life anyway, but
Yeah.
I uh I was just equating it to as you were talking, I was thinking about like what is that feeling? And I've never been one to like approach women with an overabundance of confidence. I left that
Mm.
for my brother. He's the blonde one of the family. But so when I would see a really beautiful woman when I was growing up and like when I was 20s and single, the good old days. Just kidding. Edit that out. No, uh, I was so nervous, and like I was like, oh, I don't even know how to approach that person. And I think that's the same feeling I get if I do see like super famous people.
Mm,
Because like when I lived in LA, like there was a couple occasions where I'd see people where I was like, Nope." And it'd be cool if I could approach them. And but it's a weird feeling, like it's a gut feeling where you're just like get super nervous, and
yeah.
but we kind of give them the power that
Mm,
they have. It's very strange.
it
I don't know
is.
how I was going to that.
Yeah, I mean it's just a strange thing indeed. You know how we just view people, and it's I think social media has definitely enabled us to or disenabled our ability to just communicate. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people just don't know how to just have a conversation, and that's what I love about doing these podcasts is like I feel like I'm helping myself like become that dinner party like talker like
Yeah.
and it's very interesting to see other people struggle at that like I'm like oh you're really bad at talking to people like,
Yeah.
that's crazy and I'm not like even though I do the podcast and you know I talk a lot and it seems like I'm a big talker, but I'm really like a quiet person when I'm around people I don't know because I just listen. Like I like to listen to see, you know, what they talk about or I
Yeah.
watch their body language just to see like what kind of person they are. I'm a very like I analyze. Like I just
Yeah.
analyze the room, I
An
analyze
observer.
people.
Yeah.
Yes, I do that a lot before I start talking, I just observe for as long as I can. And then I'm like, okay, this is what's safe to say, or you know, safe to talk about, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what I think is cool about what your podcast, the friend request thing, because you're taking you know even people that you already knew or people that you might not have known, and
Yeah.
you're just kind of diving into their life and you're also it's kind of funny because you said you're asking them you know what have you been up to and it's you're like forcing people's hand to what have I been up to like what
Yeah.
am I doing with my life.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if it has anything to do with how they tell the story, because 90% of the people I talk to and ask if they will be on the show, I get the same response, which is, "Oh, I don't have anything interesting to say,"
I'm not
which
important.
is total crap. Like it's uh, every literally by definition, everybody's story is unique. There's nobody's upbringing, relationship, anything that's exactly like someone else's,
Yeah.
and uh, the way I run the show is I start out with like how I know somebody, if we have a past together, and then I go back to when they were born. And I'm like, tell me about your siblings. What'd your parents do when you were growing up? Like,
Mm.
and I think so. Then we get to the current timeline organically from the start, and I think that that helps create that narrative and like pull out those highlights. Because if you're going to recap your life in an hour and a half, like you're going to probably pull out the highlights. You're not going to spend, okay, that's not entirely true, some people do spend like 2 hours talking about like, oh man, this one class I had. I'm like, what you are 40, how are we talking about that class you had when you were 19? um and but for the most part, people get there in this meaningful and organic way, because I think we start at the start and move forward. And that's, I think, where they get a lot of light bulb moments when I'm talking to people, is because they'll tell me this, and like, oh, this is like no one specific, but just an example, like, oh yeah, and I had this relationship with my dad, blah blah blah, and then we'll move down the road and they'll be in their 20s or something telling me a story, and I'll be like, you think you did that like because of what happened with your dad? And they'll be like, oh my god, I never thought about that. And then like bing, and like
Mm.
and it's like, as the interviewer, and then also as someone that like is going to school to be a therapist, I'm like, yes, yes. it's, so it's really cool though, because I've made those connections like in therapy and stuff, just with myself, like and done so much work that I love seeing when other people get to experience that, because they're just these tiny little moments, but they add up into like life changing breakthroughs, and it's really cool. So yeah, I like doing that. I like hearing the stories.
Yeah, I don't know how your brain works when it comes to like putting together like stories like that, but like how I would do it was, while they're telling me things, I would just start grouping them. So if they started telling me about I guess like athletic things that they did, I'd start grouping all that together, and they started telling me about times they were sad. I start putting all their feelings together, and then
Yeah.
so that's by the time we get down to, so if we started at birth and now we're at them at 30 something, I would like, if they said something about, I'm not having a great relationship with my kid right now. They're not doing things that, I would like to do, and we're having a bad time. And if earlier they talked about having a bad time with their father, I'd be like, oh, well, I'd link that back because
Yeah.
in my brain, I group things together to like, I'm a very efficient person.
Yeah.
I don't like to drag things on. I like to get it, condensed as much as possible so that my brain can like process all the information. And so that's how I would do it. And I feel like, um, to be able to do that, you are thinking of the most condensed way to like put their life together. And you're only getting, an hour or so of what they're telling you of their life, but they
Yeah.
have their whole life in their brain.
Yeah.
But you only have so much, so you have to like, you know, divide it. Get some folders in your brain, and then
Yeah.
just piece it together the way you can and organize it. So
Yeah, and it's this is how my brain works. You're telling me that, and I know that's like just example, not a specific thing, but uh, I recognize a lot of my questions are like projection questions, right? Like my parents divorced when I was 4. My dad moved to Florida. We stayed in Michigan, and like, so I'll always ask if like, hey, did your parents drink? Like, 'cause,
mm,
and I'll always ask like, oh, did your parents get divorced? Like, there's stuff that I throw out there because it happened to me.
mm,
So like in that way, and from all the other stories that people have told me, like when you're telling me stuff like, oh, okay, I did this athlete stuff and then I'm not being, I was like, when you said, oh, and then, I'm not connecting with my kid or something, I was like, ooh, who were you an athlete for? Like, who were you trying to get approval from when you were doing stuff when you were younger? Are you trying to give that same approval to your kid now? And they're not like, I
yeah,
just, that's how my, like that stuff you just said, that's how I was connecting all that before you did. It's like, oh, okay. Okay. This imagination or imagination imaginary person that you're putting
yeah,
together. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm already giving them childhood issues. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Too funny.
everybody's got their way of analyzing
Yeah.
what's going on in people's life, and it's amazing to me. So I do audiobooks, as I said, and I've done two, and one of the audiobooks I did is called Emotional Intelligence, blah 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 blah. It's got a really long title, but that book taught me a lot about emotional intelligence, and I didn't realize. So I think I have a really high emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize how low other people's emotional intelligence was until I read that book, because a lot of the stuff it was talking about in there is just so natural to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, other people don't think like this? Like, I thought everybody thought like this.
Yeah.
It was so weird.
I wonder if I was recently recommended a book, uh emotional intelligence something something something. I'm wondering if it's the same book.
It might be. There's actually like a bunch of them.
Oh, sure.
Let's see. Oh, shoot. I can't remember the guy who actually wrote the book. So, like, I use acx.com, and basically I go on that website, and then I just pick a book that I want to read, and then I audition for it. If they pick me, they pick me. If they don't, they don't. But so I had no idea who the guy was.
Yeah, yeah.
I just read it and put it up on Audible. But when I tried to search for the book, when it was like after it was published, there's like 1,000 books. It's probably legit, maybe 10 or so books that are like emotional intelligence, colon
Yeah,
something
yeah.
something something. I was like, dear God.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't be surprised by that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize when you mentioned you do audiobooks. I mean, it makes sense listening to your voice that you're doing the audiobooks. So so that's cool. So you just set it up and read the books.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's,
Thank you. By the way, yeah. A
I've
lot of
I've
people say I have like a radio voice or a audi, audible book or
yeah,
voice or something like that. So,
I have to shift my voice to get to there.
mm.
Like I'll start the podcast and you're like, hello and welcome. This is Justin. Like it, and then as I'm talking, if I get into the conversation, I get like that higher nasally voice that you probably heard a number of times already during this time. Eh, um, yeah, that's cool. I all I do is Audible because I just don't like reading. I write, like that's one of those things you can add to the list of the shit that I do. Um, and I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, and I love writing. I love it
What are
so
you
much.
writing?
Huh?
What are you writing?
I'm writing I'm writing about my 2 years that I lived in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
Because it was legit the most self-destructive I think I've been in my entire life, and there, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a happy ending because now like
Were,
things are great.
were
But
you self-destructive because it was Los Angeles?
hey, yeah, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Uh, no, I think I was probably in pretty good shape or pretty bad shape when I got there. Then I moved there with a girl, and then she left after the first year, and so
Mm,
then the second year was just not, I mean, it was a lot of fun, but it was not not great in the grand scheme of things.
mm,
Um, I always wanted to get it out on paper, so I started writing that. And but yeah, I love writing, and I just do not like reading at all. I don't know why I can't stick with a book, but I can listen to a book on Audible and like be in it
mm,
the whole time. And also I can adjust the speed, so I can listen to like one and a half, and I think my mind works a little fast because like
mm.
every I listen to everything one and a half.
Okay.
My wife thinks it sounds like chipmunks are talking, but I don't think
Yeah,
it.
I'm actually a slow processor. Like I think it takes me a while to like catch on to things, but like
Yeah.
once I've got it, I've got it. Even like when I was in college, it took me a while to like understand stuff, but like there was a time this makes me mad to this day still, but so I'm in economics class and our professor was like teaching us something and like nobody got it but me. And the professor would literally like tell us stuff and it's like a room full of probably like 20 something people. And it seemed like everybody was confused. And then I literally re-explained what the professor said, but like so 19 and 20-year olds could understand. And everybody was like, oh. And I was like, there you go. You're welcome. And then she was like, thank you. But no joke, when it came test time, I did worse than everybody else.
Oh
I
no.
have no idea why. Like, I think I'm a bad test taker. Like, I usually don't do
Yeah.
well on tests.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anxiety, but like I do get pretty nervous because I feel pressure to like do so well.
Yeah.
But because I think I'm a pretty intelligent person, but like I know I'm not the smartest person, so I know I'm not going to do better than everybody, but I still expect myself to do pretty well.
Yeah.
But so I get like dumb nervous during tests, and I don't know, like my brain just like dumps. It's like nope, we don't know any of this. So
Yeah. Well, and they set it up, to almost create that environment. It's really strange. I especially during COVID and everything. Like I've been in school. I'm about to start the master's program to get counseling, blah blah. But I I'd take these classes where it's like open notes, and so I'd sit there. I'd have the test. I'd have the notes. I know for a fact all of the answers are next to me in this thing, and I still am like, oh my god, I only got 3 hours. Like, and it just creates this anxiety. Like it's timed. Like this is whatever percentage of your grade, and no matter how well you know it, you still are just given all of these things that are just made to create this anxiety about what do you it's such a messed up system. There's so many people fighting against how standardized tests work now anyway, and
yeah,
I think, yeah, testing in general is very, very strange. And you have those other people, buddy of mine, uh, high school, like homework, classwork, he never did any of it. Um, and he would like screw it up sometimes, but when it came test time, tests were great. Like
Mm,
he was always good on tests, everything else was fine. And it's like kind of this careless, apathetic attitude.
mm.
And so I don't know if it's trying to put this one size fits all approach on learning. And I feel like at this point we've learned that that doesn't work.
So I was just talking to somebody about this. I think it was my last podcast, but I was talking to them about, you said one size fits all. I think the system. I was talking about in Holes. You remember the movie Holes?
Yeah.
This. I just use this example. There's plenty of examples. This is just the one I thought of, where it's like the school teacher was, in the schoolhouse with, like, a bunch of little kids, and I feel like that is still America's way of teaching. That's still the
Yeah.
teaching system. Is, all the moms have to drop the kids off in this building, and then this teacher just gives them their info, and then they send them home, and that's it. That's school. But
Yeah.
like, it's like we haven't broken out of that system. It's like, we have plenty of technology and resources to not teach school that way anymore. Like, you
Yeah.
don't need useless info. If you're going to become a podcaster or a YouTuber, you don't need to know what happened back in 1454, like
Yeah.
history. Yes, it's important so we don't repeat the dumb mistakes we used to make, but like, I think kids should have a choice. Like, I know we all think that sometimes kids can be idiots, which they can. We were all dumb at one point. Like, we did dumb stuff when we were younger, but kids are still smart, and they should be able to make decisions on what they would like to do in their future. And there's plenty of 15 and 16-year-olds that have a decent idea what they'd like to do when they get older. Give them a shot to make a hard decision, like, hey, I want to be an electrician. And so give them electrical courses and teach them
Yeah.
physics and chemistry, or like whatever. Like, give them science type stuff, and then that's all they should be required to do. But don't give them this old school teaching mentality of one size fits all.
Well, yeah, and there I think and I don't want to like mansplain what you just said, but I I think kind of what you're saying, right, is we're taking away the stuff that is helping to create more open-mindedness stuff, like creative, that stuff's getting defunded constantly, like music programs and art programs and all that stuff. And then on top of that, uh we're giving everybody facts, but we're not teaching them how to do critical thinking. So then they're just, there's, I think it's been proven over time and time again, like you're not going to learn and like be able to make decisions outside of the tested material if you're just given like, you know, 1 plus 2 equals 3, say that 10 times, and then take the test where it says, what does 1 plus 2 equal? Okay, that's 3. Like, and obviously I'm not just math. Please continue to teach math to everybody. Uh, but just like, the critical thinking skills, the stuff that where you read a problem and or you're faced with a real life problem and you have to actually like evaluate your options and really question like what's best, and sometimes figure out like, oh, there's going to be a loser in any scenario, so what's the best case scenario, and like, those things are not, I think, being uh, catered to in the school system. And the sadder part is, I think a lot of teachers are on our side of that argument,
Mm,
but it's not up to the teachers on a lot of levels because of this. Because full circle back, I don't even know how we started talking about this, but like back to standardized testing and stuff, right? Like that's why so many people that are in education are against standardized tests, because they're not they're not actually developing the kids. They're just developing the numbers that decide funding, which is bullshit to begin with.
that's true.
It's yeah. I, that I felt like getting on a soapbox, and I'm worried about that because I don't know if I know as much as I sound like I know. So, but yeah, I have a lot of friends that are teachers, and I don't know any of them that disagree with everything I just said. So, and I was an arts and music kid, and like I think I am more self aware and can problem solve better than a lot of people my age. So
And I think it's healthy. Like,
yeah,
it's healthy for kids to be forced to think instead of regurgitate information, because when you teach a child to think, they can solve the problems eventually, and it might not be, you know, on demand, but they'll learn how to figure stuff out, and that's all we need as a human society is
Yeah.
people who know how to think and figure stuff out. Because if we don't, that's how we regress. You know, if we're I love the idea of if you're not getting better, then you're just getting worse. Like you're not the same person you were yesterday. Like you
Yeah.
either got better or you didn't. Like those are your two options. So yeah, I think just teaching kids how to be creative and also like a lot of kids they have a hard time. I think they have a hard time learning the difference between being different and being difficult. They should not be difficult. But they should be different. You know, you
Yeah.
should learn how to think for yourself and be different. But
Yeah.
yeah, we should praise being creative.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking like if there was a history test and it was like some essay question on like the Revolutionary War, if I was a teacher and I had a kid that just wrote some like crazy story and like just made his own Revolutionary War because he didn't know the answer, I'd be like, oh, half credit for sure, because that's a
Yeah.
great story. Like, good for you for diving into that imagination. I mean, the answer is wrong, and I want you to be clear about that, but half credit for sure.
Oh man.
That's
Um, Completely random, but the fire and blood that's in your background, that's Game of Thrones.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
was
my
really bothering me.
brother-in-law.
Yeah,
My
I saw
brother-in-law got
the.
me that big banner for Christmas one year.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, I saw the. I was been trying to figure it out this whole time. Like in my brain, I'm like, I think that's Game of Thrones, but I'm not
Yeah.
positive. So are you a huge fan of Game of Thrones?
You know, when it was on, and this is back in my drinking days too. We would we'd make a whole spectacle of it every Sunday. We had a roommate at the time, so it was me, my wife, who I think was just my girlfriend or fiance at the time, and our roommate, and we'd like there's this brewery by me called Dragon Mead, so we'd go there and we'd get like Dragon Mead ale, and we'd make a bunch of bomb ass food, and then we'd watch the show, and then I'd have to watch it later in the week because I'd probably get drunk during the show and forget half of it, but uh, so while it was on, I loved it. I was a big I mean, I've said it a billion times. I'm a big nerd. Like I have Dungeons and Dragons shit. Like I was like, yeah, Game of Thrones, awesome. Any show you want to put a dragon in, I'll probably get behind it. Because I was a nerd kid and I loved it. But then the last season, I was like most people, I think I was pretty disappointed in. And they did that. They've done that with so many shows where it's just been so good, and then it's almost as if they just want to like rush and get it over with.
Yeah, they run out of
uh
stuff to do.
and it's just a bummer. Well, tying up loose ends should be more than just tying up loose ends when you've developed a story that long.
Yeah.
uh Even stupid stuff like I don't know if you ever watched the show How I Met Your Mother.
Hmm.
That show was super funny, well written, great show, and then the last season was just complete garbage.
Mm.
And uh we were just talking about Dexter. Dexter's coming back out. They're like re-releasing the show or redoing it or whatever that
Hmm.
looks like. And they said they're finally going to give Dexter the ending that it deserved because another show, amazing show, won awards, so good, writing's great, acting's great. Last like the ending of it essentially was just trash.
Mm.
Uh, and I feel like this happens with so many things, and I'm sure anyone listening or watching this is naming off stuff in their head right now because they do it all the time, right? They develop these big series and then I don't know, get lazy at the end, or they should have ended it earlier, but they kept going, and now they find themselves in the spot where they're like, oh, I don't know, I guess we just got to like kill this guy or something like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's frustrating. So that's a very long answer to did I like Game of Thrones? Yeah, I
Yes or no?
yes, I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good show. I actually, I didn't care to watch it, and then my wife, I think we were just dating at the time, and then
Yeah,
I found out she was huge into it, and then we started watching it together, and I think we just, I think I started watching it like season. I think they were about to start season 5. I think. And
It's a crazy time to come in. Whether they just like cut a dick off right before that or something.
shoot, I think crap. I can't remember what happens around that time, but it was a weird time to come in because it was kind of like a transitioning phase. Like something big was
Yeah,
about to happen. I was like,
yeah, yeah.
ah, what's going on? But yeah. So we binge watched like the first 4 seasons, and or I think it was the first 3 seasons, and season 5 had like came out, and I was like, yeah, let's just skip season 4. She's like, what? So I do this thing that pisses her off, and I don't know if it'd bother you, but if I'm not super invested in a show, like I don't really care what happens. Like I just want to. It's like I'm in a hurry to get to the ending. Like
Yeah.
I just want to know the next story. Like just give me more. Like what's going on next? And so if I miss something, I'm like I miss it. Just what happens next? Just tell me. And so we legit binge watched 3 seasons, and then season 5 came out, and I was like, yeah, we'll just skip season 4 and just go to season 5. It destroyed her mindset of
Yeah.
all
That's
things TV shows.
that's blowing my mind right now. Well, because all I can think about, especially if you would have said that about like any sitcom.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah, but when I think of Game of Thrones, I feel like any episode, because I mean I watched all of it and I'd still be like, wait, who the hell are they talking about? Because there's like 15 families and you're supposed to remember like that this person's related to this person and this lady killed this husband and like what? So they're like, oh yes, lady whoever, and you're like, who's that? And they're like, she was like, 2 seasons ago she said hello in the background, and you're supposed to just remember who that is. So skipping an entire season, I think I would be so confused. And I guess it's fine if you don't mind, but I think the caveat is then during season 5, did she watch season 4, your wife?
Yeah, she watched it.
So during season 5, did you ever turn to her and go, wait, who's this guy?
Oh yeah, and then a lot of times,
See, that would drive me nuts.
yeah, and then a lot of times, but she loves that. She loves to explain things, and the funny thing is, she would ask me questions about things that were going on in
That's
season
funny.
5. I was like, Rachel, you know I skipped 4, and you know I'm watching 5 with you. So
Oh man.
I don't have these answers. I don't know what you're trying to ask me.
Yeah,
So
I think that part would drive me nuts. Like if me and my wife are watching a show together and then she's like, well, wait, what's going on with this guy? I'm like, oh, you should know this. Why am I? It's like, you
uh,
know, movie theaters were closed for like a year, right? And so we watch movies at home. I mean, I still haven't gone to the theater, but I'm always a little weary about watching movies at home because I'll wait at some point during the movie there will be a question and I'll have to fucking pause it and I'll get so pissed. uh, it's just like, oh man, what especially if it's something we both haven't seen. Like, why do you think I know any more than you do? We
yes,
just
we're watching this together.
I didn't like read a book before this happened. I don't know. I have no idea. Drive me nuts. Uh,
Justin, I want to start wrapping this up, but
yeah,
I feel like we've talked about a
a
lot
lot of
of
different
stuff,
stuff.
but I have no idea if we covered enough stuff about you so people know. I mean, I think people know you as a person,
Yeah,
but I don't know if they know everything that you do. So you've got the podcast, the friend request.
yeah. So
You do music. What else you got?
yeah, I do my podcast friend request, available on any platform, and our third season, like I said, my music you can get on iTunes and everywhere else. Justin Lamb, it's just me. Thinking about releasing songs that I wrote over COVID.
Do
uh
it.
I just, yeah, I had a buddy that I interviewed that was just like, just I release singles now, and I was like, why do you do that? He's like, because I've just like put it out there,
Do it.
instead of just I'm gonna make this album or I'm gonna get this many tracks together. It's just like I just release it. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I should probably do that. And like I mentioned, I write non-alcoholic beer reviews for the Sober Curator. I got heavy into non-alcoholic beer because I used to be heavy into alcoholic beer. And there's a whole craft brewery movement in the non-alcoholic world. So I still get my IPAs and my stouts and my sours and all that stuff's available just without the alcohol, which is nice because when I drank, I tended to make decisions that I would later regret.
Shocker.
That's, yeah, that's the I guess the shortest version of that story. Um, and so I'm a big beer nerd. Like I like the process and the way that it's literally an artisan.
You
Um,
said these are articles that you're writing?
yeah, I do. Well, I do a YouTube channel where I do the beer reviews, and then there's a accompanying article that I write for
Oh,
sobercurator.com, which is the sober lifestyle magazine. Uh,
awesome.
and I do that, and yeah, and then I mean those are my big things that I do. I do a bunch of other miscellaneous crap, but nothing worth worth promoting. I will definitely be promoting my book whenever that is finally done. Um, and I'm in all social media at Justin Lamb Music or at Friend Request Pod. And yeah, this last summer, I think next week's the last episode of the summer series I did for the podcast, where I interviewed a bunch of people I don't know. There's a few previous guests, but for the most part, people I don't know about their business, because I did a whole series on entrepreneurs and small business owners and like how that happened, right? Because typically you don't hear the in between stuff. It's always like, oh yeah, I was homeless in New York and now I like own this skyscraper, and you're like, what how did that happen? What is the middle part between A and Z?
Have
And
you
so
heard how I built this?
the podcast,
Yeah, yeah.
no.
Oh my God. How I built this
Go on.
with Guy Raz. That's the whole name of the podcast. It's called How I Built This with Guy
Oh,
Raz.
okay.
You know what NPR is? Like the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's who he works for, but it's still his podcast. But yeah, that's what it's called, and he just interviews. But he doesn't do like small business. He
Yeah.
does like,
The
you
big
know,
guys.
yeah. He's had on the woman who invented Spanx, the guy who invented Wikipedia, the person who invented like the like Cisco switches,
Yeah.
Dell computers, Airbnb, like
That's cool. Yeah, no,
all
I didn't know that.
major companies. But yeah, and he just takes them kind of like you were talking about with your podcast, like taking them through like their life. He
Yeah.
starts them out like, how were you as a kid? You know, were you a good student? He asks them if they were a good student a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I think, but like, I think his whole agenda for his podcast is to make people realize like anybody could do it. Like,
Yeah, and
you don't have to
that's
be some genius.
that's kind of what I wanted to do too. And I specifically wanted people that had small businesses or like self-started stuff, because my listener base is not people that have 2-3 million dollars that they're investing in something, like
Yeah.
and the question that I really wanted to ask everybody was, what was your emotional and more importantly financial support while you were building that?
Mm,
Because I think that's the thing that people have this weird like shame about. Because a lot of people's answer is like, my spouse worked while I didn't, and I built this thing. And a lot of people have like shame or guilt about that to some degree. So they don't talk about it. So people just think like one day, Martha quit her job at, some finance company and all of a sudden like started selling pillows online, and now she just works for herself. And like, wait, hold on. Something tells me Martha wasn't making, 50-60,000 a year right off the bat making
correct.
pillows. So yeah, I'm really curious about that transition period that doesn't get talked about, of like, you're working 9 to 5. What's your hustle look like? How do like, and what does that transition look like? Like, when do you quit your job? How scary is that?
Yeah.
And then invest yourself, like in yourself, to do whatever this is. And those stories are fascinating, and it's inspiring, because every single person had to take a leap of some sort,
Mm.
and all of those leaps involve having faith in themselves, which is it's a scary thing when your like financial well-being and your livelihood depends on that. So
Absolutely. I
that
think we'll enjoy that how I built this because it's really set up, the way you're
I'm
doing.
surprised I haven't heard of that. I'm excited to find out about it. I'm going to listen to it.
I don't even remember who told me about it, but I felt kind of bad because they were like, "Well, I'm sure you've heard of how I built this." So, and I was like, "Ooh, I haven't." And but I immediately started listening to it, and I've been addicted. Like I used to only listen. Well, I used to listen to like two podcasts: Joe Rogan and My Favorite Murder. Have you heard of that one?
I think my wife listened to that.
Yeah, those are like the two podcasts I would listen
Yeah,
to. And then I slowly stopped listening to My Favorite Murder because their podcast started getting weird. It started out with like hometown murders, so it's people
yeah,
who lived in like, smaller areas and they would like tell about a murder that happened. But it ended up becoming just like weird stories. Like people would just send them in like, oh, my friend told me this story about something something that happened and we all got freaked out. Like that's how it's kind of turned into. So I kind of stopped listening, but
yeah,
um, then I was listening to just like strictly Joe Rogan. But now I've been into how I built this because I'm an entrepreneur and
yeah,
I just want to know how other people, built their billions, like literally billions. There's been plenty, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 billionaires that they've
yeah,
had on the show, and then the rest of them are hundreds of millions of millionaires. But yeah, I mean, it's great listening to literally how they built it. So it's an awesome podcast.
yeah. I'd be interested to hear that because I found and obviously this isn't a blanket statement, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't heard that show, so I want to listen to it. But I found when I was looking for guests, it seemed like the more you know, not like not billionaire, obviously, but then also over 100 grand a year, like there was this space where people didn't want to answer the questions that I had, because they were still in the like, I'm successful, but I'm not as successful as I want to be. And I'm still living by the like, fake it till I make it thing. So I don't want to
Mm,
reveal too much because then that's going to like ruin this facade that I think I'm presenting to people. Because,
mm,
a lot of people, you're selling yourself, right? You're selling your image, your brand, like, especially if your name is the brand. And, yeah, I did research on one. I'm not going to say who it is, but and I kind of confronted him about stuff because I knew him from some different. I'm big into Clubhouse. I don't know if you know that app.
the
It's
app.
a
Oh, okay,
yeah.
yeah,
Um, and I know the guy from Clubhouse, and I was like, "You're like," I didn't call him a liar or anything, but I was like, "You are not like as qualified and successful as you've been kind of saying you are.
yeah.
Like, you still work at this place, like like it's all on the freaking internet, man."
Yeah.
um and it was so I was like, I don't even want to use this interview. I did, but I felt a little bad because I don't want to crush his image, but I also like don't want to give my listeners like anything inauthentic if I can help it.
Mm,
So it's weird. Yeah, there's that level of success where I think people are still they get concerned about their image because their image is their brand, and anything that might tarnish that, like a story that anyone can take in any sort of way. And we know from the celebrity conversation, full circle back to the beginning, that people can interpret stuff in all sorts of different ways if the wrong information gets out there. So I think people hold some cards to their chest the more successful they are. So I'd be curious to hear that podcast. I want to look into that for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Did you? So you gave everybody your podcast, your
Oh
music.
yeah.
Anything else?
Follow along. I think I'm wearing my friend request shirt
Yeah,
because
there you
I'm shameless.
go.
Yeah, no, that's everything, man. That's everything I do, and I appreciate it. This is a great conversation all across the board, and that's my favorite kind to do it. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Well, all right. Thank you so much for coming on, and maybe we'll do this again and get into some other stuff.
yeah. Maybe I'll talk to you on mine.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
All righty. Well, thank you for everybody tuning in, and we'll see you next time.